Object-oriented programming is both a necessary tool as well as a difficult hurdle for new programmers. One reason it is difficult is that you have to learn why to use it before you learn how. So in this lesson, I'll take a real-world programming problem and try to solve it first without object-oriented programming. And you'll see where the code starts to break down and how it becomes unmanageable. Then, I'll show you how to use object-oriented programming to solve the same problem. The task is this. The program should read in these lines and produce this output. So this is a WPF application, and this line describes a flashcard which is interactive. And this line is the same kind of flashcard. This, however, is a multiple choice question and has a little bit different data, which is displayed differently here. The true-false question is like the flashcard, but it says true or false at the beginning, but still works like a flashcard. And this is another multiple choice question. So let me begin by solving this problem without object-oriented programming. So let's create a new WPF application by starting Visual C# 2010 Express or Visual Studio, whatever you happen to have. Click on New Project and WPF application. Go into the XAML and let's change this to a stack panel. Give it a margin of 10. And inside that, let's just build everything inside a stack panel for our example. So give it the name of main stack panel, like that. And then here's a Visual Studio tip. If you press F7 here, you'll go right into your code. And we can start developing it here. So just in case you're new to WPF, let's get a little test going here. So we can make, for instance, a text block, tb equals new text block, and the text is test. And then we're going to add this to the main stack panel that we created in XAML. So main stack panel children, add the text box. And if I run this, I get a WPF application that says test. So let me get the lines that we have to process that I showed earlier. And we'll take all this out now that you see how that works. So these are the lines that we have to process into the interactive application that I showed you. So how are we going to solve this? I mean, basically what we need to do is iterate through all of these lines here through the line collection, and depending on what kind of question it is, display it in a different way. So in any case, we're going to have to iterate through the line. So let's do that. So line in lines, and we have each line now. So in the spirit of iterate often, iterate early and often, let's get something shown here so that we can see it working. So what we have at this point is a line, and we need to make a text block like we just had. Equals new text block, and then the text block text now equals line, let's say, and we'll add that to the main stack panel, children add TB. So now we should see all of these at least, and we do. Now we have to do some parsing. So let's say the string array, we'll call it parts, equals the line split into pieces between semicolons. And then we can say that the kind of question equals the parts, the first part that comes out. And that is, for instance, flash card or multiple choice. So let's see if that works. We'll kind here and we run it, and indeed, flashcard, multiple choice, true, false, multiple choice. That's exactly what they are here. So now we can use a switch statement, for instance, to decide what to do based on what kind of question we're processing. So let's say here, switch kind, and then in case it is flashcard, then we can just copy this up here. And I'm doing Control KD to reformat, Control L to delete that line. And let's show here that it is indeed a flashcard. So we'll say string format and flashcard it is. And this is, let's say, the question. We'll call it question text. So now we just have to define question text. And that would be parts. And when it's a flashcard, the question text is not 0, but 1 in index. The index is 1. And that should work. And if we run it, we see that the flashcards are indeed displayed. So let's do the same with the others. So we'll copy this here and change this to multiple choice. Okay, now we're seeing that text block is defined here and here. So actually we could define it in one place above and use it in 2 places here. And the same with question text. So I'll move that up as well, since it's being shared by both. And we'll change this to multiple choice. And let's run it to see how we're doing. And so far, so good. Now we have flashcards and multiple choice. Let's do the same for true, false. We copy this. True, false. And this is true, false. And it has a question text as well. And all looks fine. So now let's start to differentiate between these. So if you remember from the example, the flashcard was clickable. So the question in the flashcard was clickable. And when you clicked on it, you saw the answer. So what we need here is to get the answer to the flashcard. And so I'll call it answer text equals parts, and then that is 2, because if we look at this text here, this is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. And I'm defining it here and not above here like question text, because for multiple choice, we don't want to define this as the answer, since this will be, for instance, answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, answer 4, since it's starting to be different than flashcard. So I'm defining answer text here, and since I need to change the visibility on the answer, I'm going to need 2 text boxes as well. So I'm going to call this one, or we can use the refactoring here in Visual Studio and call this TB question, and then you just want to right click here, rename, and it's all renamed here very nicely. And then I want to say text block TB answer equals new text block, and then TB answer text, just as I have up here, is going to be answer text. And TB question, as in the example, was actually just question text. And now it's starting to come together here. I'm going to have to make a stack panel equals new stack panel and put these both in there. Add TB question and add TB answer. So they'll be one above the other. And then in the main stack panel, I don't want to just put the question, but the stack panel that I just made here. So let's look at that. And it's starting to come together here. Here is the question text. Here is the answer text, the question text, the answer text for the flashcards. And these look different since they're being constructed differently. Now comes the point where I need to define what happens when the user clicks on the question text box. So I can do that here. TB question mouse down plus equals tab, tab. And now I'm inside the event handler when the user clicks with the mouse on the question of the flashcard. What do I need to do here? What I need to do here is change the visibility of the answer. And so we have to give an initial state of the answer's visibility, and that is visibility equals collapsed. Let me go ahead and show that to you. So here, the text box of the answer exists in the XAML tree, but it's not being displayed because it's collapsed. But when I click on this, the processing goes into the event handler, and at this point, I need to turn the answer, the text box answer's visibility, more precisely, to visibility visible. Okay? Sounds easy enough. So let me type here TB answer. Wait a minute, where is TB answer? It's not defined here. It's defined up here, it's not in my event handler. So here you see this approach starting to break down. The main problem is I don't have access to this text block here. Now, a possible answer could be to make these variables, the text box or the text block answer, global. But you can see as I do the multiple choice and the true false, and if I had 10 other kinds here, then I would have global variables all saved in one place, accessible from everywhere, which would mean that I'm going to start having variable naming conflicts. For instance, I would have to say TB answer flashcard and then TB answer multiple choice. And if I had 12 or 15 or 20 of these, you can imagine the chaos that would start to ensue. What we need is a way to encapsulate each of these objects so that the variables inside the objects, for instance, the text block answer inside the flashcard, is only available inside the flashcard, and the event handler is inside the flashcard and has access to the text block answer so I can turn it off and on when it's clicked. And while I'm in the flashcard, I don't have any access to the variables in multiple choice or in true false. I need object encapsulation, but that's not all. I also need a way for these objects to share some of their information and functionality, but not other information and functionality. I need a way for some objects to inherit from other objects, inherit the functionality and the data from other objects, while at the same time being able to provide their own functionality and data. In short, what I need is an object-oriented programming model. So let's take a fresh start at this problem, this time applying object-oriented concepts.